Well, it is a very cold and crunchy day here just outside of Quebec City in Quebec. And we are in the world of 20 years ago. It's hard to believe, but this 2005 Lexus RX 330 is 20 years old. And we're here because we're celebrating the 35th anniversary of Lexus in Canada, and they are letting us drive some of their historic models. And it's crazy to me to consider the car from 2005 is historic, but here we are. The biggest thing when I drive a car from 20 years ago like this, a normal car, is the visibility. It's so good. I feel like I'm driving a phone booth. Like I can see so easily around me, and the cabin feels so open. I know that for safety, we have to retain our knees a lot better than they used to 20 years ago. And the pillars are so small compared to the new cars. Other things I like in this 20-year-old car are the gauges. They're clear, they're legible, they're completely analog with just a little LED lighting to help me read what's on those gauges. Super simple. But even though this car is 20 years old, it still has lots of really nice luxury features. For example, it has auto up and down windows in the back and the front. It has heated seats, which are selectable almost infinitely. It's like a little knob you twist. You can set them any which way. Automatic climate control. And this car doesn't have it, but it was optional in 2005 to have a DVD-based navigation system, which was one of the very earliest navigation systems you could get. Now, under hood, we have a 3.5-liter V6, because back in the day, Lexus naming conventions used to make sense. It was based on the size of the engine. It makes like 45 horsepower less than the current one makes, and it's a really smooth engine, and I kind of miss the power delivery of these old V6s versus the Turbo 4s that are so commonplace now. Other things I kind of notice in the cabin that are like the world of yesteryear is all this wood paneling around here on the wheel, on the console. You just don't really get that anymore unless you're in something like properly old school luxurious like a Bentley. You just don't see it. The other thing that's interesting is hydraulic steering, and it's so tactile. Even in this non-performance oriented SUV, there's more steering feel here than in most new BMWs. It's crazy how good just average hydraulic steering was back in the day. Other things I noticed about this car compared to new cars are the seats. They are so much softer. They're less supportive, they have less bolstering, but I think that's because we didn't ask cars to do as much back then in a performance sense. They're just really comfortable seats, and in gray leather. Don't see that much anymore either. But kind of an interesting nostalgia piece. Now, the other thing I like about this car is the ride. Smooth. Not a care in the world. And that's because this car has 18-inch wheels, which were optional. The standard wheel size on these were 17-inch wheels. On the current RX, for reference, the standard wheel is a 19, and the optional wheel is a 21. So things have changed quite drastically. Other relics from the past here in the center console, well, there's no touchscreen at all. There's a small LED readout which has my climate functions, and it's pretty simple. But you have touch buttons for literally everything. I have 3 buttons to set the clock. I mean, I just can't remember the last time that happened. Overall, basically hard buttons control every function of the cabin, which is so rare today, especially as things are going to capacitive touch, touchscreen, etc., blah, blah, blah. I think the biggest thing that dates this cabin is the presence of a cassette player. Even for 2005, that was becoming an anomaly, and in fact, not in this exact car, but the last car produced with a cassette player was a Lexus product. So Lexus hung on to the cassette player for a very long time. So that was just a quick drive, but I hope it gave you a sense of the flavor of this car from 20 years ago and showing us where cars have progressed, where in some ways I think they've regressed, and why these cars are such a sweet spot right now for people that want a usable car that feels a little bit different. And it's worth noting too, this pristine example you see, well, it has over 200,000 kilometers on it. It is hardly a museum piece. Well, it is still a cold and snowy day north of Quebec City, and now I'm in the modern Lexus RX. Fast forward 20 years, and here we are in 2025 with the RX, and this is a 450h variant. You can get the 350, the 450h, and the 500h. Now, I would say visually on the exterior, there's not much to really link these two cars 20 years apart. It's not like how a Mustang today kind of resembles a Mustang from 20 years ago. There's not that familial resemblance with the RX family. They just changed the styling a lot. It looks very different. And especially when you come inside and it's completely different compared to that 2005 we just drove. There's a big screen in front of me, lots of black plastic. I would say the interior has kind of upped its game. We have these kind of different textures here. We have the speaker, we have the suede, the leather, black up top. I was saying that, you know, modern cars don't have wood trim, but this one has it on the wheel and the console, basically everywhere the 2005 Lexus had it. So let's go on the road and I'll tell you the differences and the similarities between these two cars. Now, one thing I was surprised to learn was that the original Lexus RX that we drove was quite expensive when new. It was around $50,000 in Canada when it was new. And if you adjust for inflation, that's actually only about $63,000 today. Now, that is interesting because the RX 330, adjusted for inflation, is cheaper than the base Lexus RX today to the tune of some $14,000. The base RX today starts at around $50,000. However, we are driving the 450h, and that hybrid only comes in the executive trim, so it only comes loaded. And with the loaded package and the hybrid, this thing is $88,000 and change. So it's a lot more expensive than the 2005. In this trim level. Ooh, that was a big bump. The other thing you notice right there was with that big bump, there's a lot more body control, which is positive because it corners a lot better than the old one, but you feel bumps more. These seats too, they're firmer. They have more bolsters. In general, our cars have kind of gotten more serious when it comes to performance, even like regular CUVs like this Lexus RX. As well, the dashboard feels higher. Visibility is not as good as it was in the 2005. That's a way in which I think cars have gone backwards and used to be better. Now, mechanically, there's not much to complain about. We have way more power from that hybrid powertrain, and we get better fuel mileage than that V6. Overall, even if you compare the modern base RX to the vintage one, it still gets better mileage. The other thing is that the four-cylinder character is very different than the V6 in the vintage one. It's very smooth when it's on hybrid power, but when you dip into the throttle and you use the gas engine, that four-cylinder is nowhere near as smooth and refined as that old one. It's just so much more smooth. Can we talk about a value proposition between these two? That baby blue car, officially called Girl Blue by Lexus, was purchased by Lexus Canada for $10,000 they paid. It has 200,000 kilometers on it. It's a good car. They paid $10,000. This car that I'm in is about $90,000. They both ostensibly are all-wheel drive 5-seat premium CUVs. One's 20 years old, one's brand new. Does this car deliver $70,000 more value? Well, comes with things like a warranty, and it's brand new, don't have to worry about corrosion. In terms of luxury features though, you are missing quite a few things. For example, this has navigation, it has a touchscreen, it has Bluetooth audio. These are all things that most modern cars have. You also have vented seats, USB-C charging. You would be giving up a lot of modern amenities to rock that 2005 model. Now, it's also worth pointing out that this model is 220 pounds heavier than the 2005 model. It's also 7% larger if you consider its footprint and its height. Despite that, the old one will fit 22% more cargo with the seats up and 29% more cargo with all the seats down. And that's the price of cars being very safe. We have thicker pillars, higher door sills, and these things keep our bodies contained in a violent crash, but they come at a cost of space intrusion. Despite the fact that the seats are comfortable, it rides better, and the engine is smoother. You'll also pay more for gas. So I don't think we'll see a lot of people ditching their brand new Lexus RXs to go back in time to the vintage 2005 second generation model. But it has been pretty fun to compare these two. I mean, when you're comparing cars that are 20 years apart, the winner is going to be tough, because obviously the new car is going to be empirically better at everything. It's just technology advances. Cars get faster, they get more efficient, they get safer. But it's interesting to me that the largest common thread between the two is not the styling or the interior or the drivetrain. The largest thing that they have in common is the feeling when you drive it. They're both very relaxed, very comfortable SUVs with a lot of room inside for their exterior footprint. The Lexus RX has sold I think over 500,000 models since its inception, and it's not by accident. It's a very crowded segment. But it has been fun to contrast this car with one we might not normally consider classic, but 20 years ago is closer than it ever has been. So what do you think? Which would you rather drive through the Quebec countryside? This modern and completely capable 2025 Lexus RX, or the 2005 Lexus RX Throwback? Let us know in the comments. And for more then and now comparisons, don't forget to check us out on our website, Driving.ca, where you'll also find my full written review on both these cars. Thanks for watching.